we will be covering athlete-centered coaching, constraints-led approach, affordances, motivational climate, and the recommendations for future.
Athlete-centered coaching focuses on the achievements of athletes' goals. This creates a positive learning environment and caters the needs of all athletes. This approach prioritises the holistic development of the players, helping to develop independent athletes and frame coaching sessions, also facilitating a focused learning environment with affirmative pedagogies. Athlete-centered coaching is consistent with social constructivist theories of learning where coaches and athletes are all centrally involved in the learning process. Decision-making is central to an athlete-centered coaching orientation. With athlete-centered coaching, it's important to have an environment that provides a structure for learning and is also conducive to open communication, shared goal setting, and collaborative decision-making. This half-court gameplay focuses on the three main different types of passing, such as chest pass, bounce pass, and overhead passes, putting practice into play. This links to our overall session objective, which encapsulates accurate passing and aims of the game, which was to prevent defenders intercepting the attacker's passes. Players have influence over their learning, transferring skills learnt in drills onto the court for gameplay, such as passing techniques, positioning, and space on the court. Players' decisions have been guided through their gameplay with self-awareness, knowledge, and understanding. This also results in players having an elevated understanding of the game and the skills they have learnt and developed, with social interaction and practice becoming the focus. This also leads on to other different coaching approaches to achieve more athlete-centered outcomes, such as motivation and constraints.
The constraints-led approach places heavy emphasis on the relationship between the learner and their environment. Presented by Gibson, the ecological model of visual perception proposes the notion that the action produced by a learner will be the result of how they perceive their environment. The different internal systems an individual holds interact for knowledge to be acquired and for learning to occur. The intertwining of these systems with the environment is why learning via the constraints-led approach is considered to transpire dynamically. Learning occurs in a non-linear fashion, as learning is directed by manipulating extraneous constraints that act on an individual. This challenges them to develop their understanding of environment and performance contexts so they can develop their own movement patterns in response to an environmental stimuli. Consequently, via interacting with constraints in a sporting environment, athletes can begin to determine good responses within their participation to compete effectively. In essence, this aids what is referred to as an athlete's self-organisation, which is their ability to produce an effective behavioural pattern based off their interaction with their environment. This allows them to learn intrinsically and become an autonomous competitor while passing through their parameter learning systems efficiently to achieve high levels of performance. We suggest coaches implement constraints via altering one of the environment, the individual, or the task. For example, altering the playing surface by making it more slippery, restricting the physical attributes of a performer by restricting their limbs, or adapting the rules of a game, such as implementing a time restriction. These three constraints can encourage specific emerging behaviours that will influence the performance more effectively, thereby reinforcing learning to occur so that participation can be most effective. In this example, we implemented a constraint in the passing drill by not allowing the athletes to perform whatever pass they wanted to, but instead to only perform one type of pass, the chest pass. Limiting athletes to only one type of pass is then something we implemented in a competitive environment. In this half-court drill, we insisted the competitors only used an overhead pass, limiting them in their options, but encouraging them to find a way to adapt to their competitive environment to achieve success. We then removed the passing constraints to allow the athletes to perform whatever type of pass they wanted to. However, we then implemented a constraint of time limit, where the athletes aren't allowed to spend more than 3 seconds on the ball. It should be understood that learners function cohesively, whereby their different systems interact for learning to occur.
In short, affordances simply means possibilities. In sport, it's the opportunities to take different actions in multiple situations. Constraint-led approaches is the best way to practice affordances, as it puts them in real-life game-like scenarios for them to work out different possible outcomes for different situations. Practicing this also improves the athlete's decision-making and reaction time. For example, in our session, when we were leading the circle drill, the attackers started by just running into different areas of the circle to receive the ball. However, when we added the defender, it acted as a constraint. The attacker was forced to look for different possible ways to get around the defender to receive the ball, which is what she'd be doing in a real game situation anyway. This allows her and the feeder on the outside of the circle to practice receiving and passing the ball to different areas in the circle at different times using different passes.
The Mastery Motivational Climate is a motivational climate in which an athlete's cooperation, effort, their improvement and their learning of skills are specifically emphasised. Within sessions, it is important for the Mastery Motivational Climate to be included, as this type of motivational climate specifically focuses on improving an athlete's intrinsic motivation to participate within sessions. A successful motivational environment within a session is created by the target variables being included. The target variable represents different achievement structures. These achievement structures have been implemented by us as a coach within our netball session to ensure that the motivational climate was included. Within the target variable, each structure means T for task, ensuring that all tasks within the session are varied as well as challenging. A is for authority, allowing athletes to make their own decisions, leading to them experiencing leadership roles during the session. R is for recognition, giving athletes feedback in a discreet manner to enable them to develop, as well as us as coaches asking for feedback from the athletes on what we could improve within our own coaching style. G is for grouping, using grouping strategies to improve athlete cooperation and their interaction with others within the session. E is for evaluation. This is built upon the drills within the session and building on an athlete's improvement. Finally, T is for time. The drills within the session were adjusted to the ability of the athletes and time specific to the session. Within our session, the four-corner drill enabled us to include the target variables. The drill was challenging for athletes by including conditions within the drill such as different passes and changing direction. Athletes were grouped within the drill, enabling them to work on their interaction and teamwork with other athletes. The four-corner drill was time-specific to the overall session, with enough time during the drill for conditions to be added to the development of performance of athletes, linking to the overall objective of the session.
As a group, we have decided that the constraints-led approach is the one we would recommend to future coaches. This is because it places heavy emphasis on the learner finding their own solutions to the in-hand problem, which in turn creates better learning for them. The main reason we would choose the constraints-led approach over others is because there is less emphasis on the quantity of practice, such as repetition, and instead more emphasis on the all-round quality of the session and how it combines with the environment the learner is in to promote learning. We believe that in order to successfully deliver this theory, coaches should not force the athletes into a set movement or solution, but instead provide the athlete with the opportunity to develop their own solutions. The constraints-led approach places a lot of importance on the free will of the athlete, arguing that they should find their own solutions to the problems. We as coaches still need to ensure that we are in control, remembering that we are the ones teaching the athletes in the first place. And so it's important that we can find the balance between the athlete learning themselves, but us also being the instructors.